I am AI Avatar of CA Ratan Mundra. This document is an official order issued by the International Financial Services Centres Authority, also known as IFSCA. It relates to regulatory compliance issues identified in a fund management entity operating under the GIFT IFSC jurisdiction. The case involves V Founder Circle Private Limited and its associated entity V Founder Circle Angel Accelerator LLP. The authority conducted a detailed inspection and surveillance exercise to verify whether the entities were complying with the prescribed regulations under IFSC fund management rules and SEBI Act provisions. During the review process, multiple compliance gaps were identified. These gaps relate to operational structure, investor management, reporting standards, and regulatory adherence. The order highlights how financial regulatory bodies ensure transparency, accountability, and investor protection in international financial service centers. This case is important because it reflects how strict compliance monitoring is conducted in financial ecosystems. It also shows the seriousness of regulatory oversight in fund management operations. The background of this case explains that V Founder Circle Angel Accelerator LLP is a registered fund management entity operating in GIFT IFSC. It functions under a parent company structure where V Founder Circle Private Limited acts as the parent entity. The IFSC authority conducted a routine and surprise inspection of operational fund management entities to ensure compliance with financial regulations. These inspections are part of the regulatory intelligence framework designed to monitor financial activities in IFSC zones. During this inspection period, which took place between July and October 2024, authorities observed several operational irregularities. The purpose of the inspection was to evaluate governance, investor compliance, financial reporting, and risk management policies. The entity was expected to maintain strict regulatory standards under FM Regulations 2022. However, gaps were later identified which formed the basis of the show cause notice and further proceedings. This background establishes the foundation of regulatory action. The IFSC authority conducted a series of surprise inspections and on-site visits to evaluate the functioning of the entity. During these visits, officials observed that the office of the noticee was not consistently operational. In some instances, the office was found closed, and key managerial personnel were not present during scheduled inspections. These findings raised concerns regarding operational transparency and compliance with regulatory requirements. The authority expects fund management entities to maintain active offices with proper staffing and governance structure. Additionally, it was observed that communication regarding office availability was not properly maintained. These irregularities formed a critical part of the inspection report. The findings suggested a lack of proper operational discipline and raised concerns about whether the entity was effectively managing investor-related responsibilities under IFSC guidelines. Such observations are considered serious in regulatory frameworks. Based on the inspection report, the authority issued a formal show cause notice dated July 15, 2025. This notice outlined multiple alleged violations under IFSC fund management regulations and SEBI Act provisions. The noticee was given an opportunity to respond and explain the observations made by the authority. The purpose of issuing the SCN is to ensure principles of natural justice and provide the entity a fair chance to present its clarification. The notice included detailed allegations related to operational compliance, investor onboarding, risk management policies, and financial reporting. It also referenced specific regulatory clauses under FM Regulations 2022 and AML guidelines. The entity was required to submit written replies and appear for personal hearing before the quasi-judicial authority. This stage marked the beginning of formal regulatory proceedings in the case. The first major allegation relates to violation of Fund Management Regulations 2022. The authority observed that the entity did not maintain a proper principal officer based in IFSC as required under regulations. Additionally, it was found that the net worth requirements were not consistently maintained as per regulatory standards. The entity was also alleged to have onboarded investors without ensuring full compliance with minimum net worth conditions. In some cases, investments were accepted without meeting prescribed financial thresholds. The inspection report highlighted that proper quarterly net worth statements were not maintained or disclosed correctly. These deficiencies indicated weak internal compliance systems. The authority considered these lapses as serious because net worth and governance requirements are essential for financial stability and investor protection. The failure to maintain these standards raised regulatory concerns regarding operational integrity. The second set of allegations relates to anti-money laundering guidelines and risk management frameworks. The authority found that the entity had not implemented a fully structured enterprise-wide risk assessment system. Customer risk categorization and business risk evaluation processes were either incomplete or not documented properly. The AML and KYC policies did not fully incorporate required regulatory elements such as beneficial ownership verification and risk classification. Furthermore, the entity was alleged to have failed in maintaining updated internal AML policies in line with regulatory changes. These gaps raised concerns about the ability of the entity to detect and prevent financial crimes or suspicious transactions. The authority emphasized that AML compliance is a critical component of IFSC operations. Therefore, non-compliance in this area is treated as a significant violation. The third allegation focuses on distribution activities and agreements entered by the entity. The noticee had entered into collaboration agreements with multiple external entities for investor engagement and fund distribution activities. However, the authority observed that these arrangements effectively functioned as distribution services without proper regulatory compliance. It was alleged that the entity failed to ensure that distributors met required eligibility criteria under IFSC circulars. Additionally, proper assessment of distributor capability and compliance with code of conduct was not adequately documented. The authority also highlighted that such arrangements must comply strictly with Circular number 817 issued in 2022. Any deviation from prescribed distribution norms is considered a regulatory violation. This issue raised concerns about indirect investment solicitation and improper fund distribution mechanisms. In response to the show cause notice, the entity submitted detailed explanations and clarifications. The noticee argued that many of the alleged violations were due to procedural delays and interpretation differences. It was submitted that corrective actions had already been initiated, including updating policies and improving compliance systems. The entity also stated that principal officer arrangements were being regularized and network compliance was being aligned. Regarding AML concerns, the entity claimed that updated policies were under implementation and risk frameworks were being strengthened. The defense also highlighted that investor onboarding was done in good faith with joint investment considerations. Additionally, the entity provided supporting documents and emails to justify compliance efforts. These submissions were considered by the authority during evaluation. After reviewing all submissions and evidence, the quasi-judicial authority made detailed observations. It concluded that multiple compliance violations did exist, particularly in areas of governance, AML compliance, and regulatory reporting. The authority noted that although corrective steps were claimed, the lapses were significant in nature. Some violations were considered serious as they impacted investor protection and regulatory transparency. The findings emphasized that compliance under IFSC regulations is continuous and must be strictly maintained. The authority also observed that repeated inconsistencies in reporting and documentation weakened the entity's regulatory standing. However, it also considered the corrective actions while determining penalties. Overall, the findings reflected a mix of non-compliance and partial rectification efforts. In the final order, the IFSC authority directed the entity to comply with all regulatory requirements within a specified timeline. A monetary penalty was also imposed under relevant sections of the SEBI Act for identified violations. The noticee was instructed to ensure strict adherence to FM regulations, AML guidelines, and distribution circulars going forward. The authority also emphasized the importance of maintaining proper governance structure and investor protection mechanisms. The penalty must be paid within the prescribed timeframe, failing which additional interest may apply. The case was formally disposed of with directions for compliance reporting. This order serves as a reminder of the importance of regulatory discipline in financial service centers. It reinforces that compliance is mandatory and continuous in nature for all fund management entities operating under IFSC jurisdiction. Moon Says and Management Consultants LLP, a trusted partner for SEZ and IFSC excellence. A pioneer in establishing SEZ and IFSC units within GIFT City in India, delivering end-to-end IFSC setup, operational support, and handling compliances, risk management. Renowned for deep expertise in regulatory approvals, capital markets, fund management, insurance, finance company, foreign university, BATF, and ancillary regulations, and fintech. Expertise in customs clearance for aircraft and ship procurement, leasing, GST, DSPF, IFSCA, comprehensive support covering registration, reporting, and regulatory transitions, ensuring ring fencing, transparency, and global compliance standards. Join our network. Scan the QR codes below to stay connected with us.